You finally got good at something. Really good. Spent months, maybe years getting there. People are impressed. They ask for your advice. And then, out of nowhere, you don't care anymore. The thing that consumed you completely now feels like a chore. And everyone around you is confused. Why would you walk away right when you got good? But you're not confused. You're already thinking about the next thing. Let me paint you a very specific picture. You spent 6 months learning guitar, practiced every day, watched tutorials, your fingers hurt, you pushed through. And then one day, you can finally play the songs you wanted to play. You're good now. People at parties ask you to play, and suddenly, the guitar sits in the corner collecting dust. Not because you don't like it anymore, but because the challenge is gone. And without the challenge, the dopamine disappeared. Or maybe this. You got really into cooking, watched every cooking show, bought the good knives, perfected your technique, your friends rave about your meals, you could do this professionally. And then you stop. Just like that. Not because you failed, but because you figured it out. The mystery is solved, and your brain is already scanning for the next puzzle. Or this one hits different. You spent years building expertise in your career, finally became the person people come to for answers. You're respected. You're good. And instead of feeling accomplished, you feel trapped. Because now that you've mastered it, doing it every day feels like repeating the same level in a game you've already beaten. The excitement isn't in doing it well anymore. It's in learning something new. And you can't learn what you've already mastered. Most people think this is lack of discipline, commitment issues, fear of success even. But here's what's actually happening. Your brain isn't broken. It's optimized for learning, not maintaining. And mastery feels like death to a mind that's wired for growth. Let me explain what's really going on in your brain. When you're learning something new, your brain releases dopamine. Not when you succeed, but during the learning process itself. Neuroscientists call this the prediction error signal. Your brain loves the gap between what you know and what you're trying to figure out. Every small improvement, every new connection, every aha moment triggers a dopamine hit. You're not addicted to the skill. You're addicted to the acquisition of the skill. And once that gap closes, once you've figured it out, the dopamine stops and so do you. Dr. Robert Cloninger, who studies personality and motivation, found that people high in novelty-seeking behavior have a specific dopamine receptor variation. Their brains are literally wired to crave new experiences and get bored with repetition faster than others. You're not uncommitted. You're neurologically programmed to seek novelty. And mastery, by definition, is the opposite of novelty. It's repetition. It's refinement. It's doing what you already know how to do, just slightly better. And your brain finds that excruciating. But here's where it gets deeper. The boredom you feel after mastering something isn't really about the skill. It's about identity. When you're learning, you're becoming. You're transforming from someone who can't do something into someone who can. That transformation is intoxicating. You're literally watching yourself evolve in real time. But once you've mastered it, you stop becoming. You just are. And being feels stagnant compared to becoming. You're not bored with guitar. You're bored with being a guitarist. Because that identity is now fixed. And you need your identity to be in motion. Think about what happens right before you quit something you've mastered. There's this moment where you realize you could keep getting incrementally better, but the improvements are smaller now. Going from beginner to intermediate felt like leaps. Going from advanced to expert feels like inches. The effort required for each improvement skyrockets, but the dopamine payoff plummets. Your brain does the math and decides it's not worth it. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain's reward system is telling you to allocate resources somewhere with a better return on investment. Somewhere you can feel that learning curve again. And here's what nobody talks about. People who get bored after mastering something often feel guilty about it. They look at people who dedicate their entire lives to one craft and wonder what's wrong with them. Why can't they commit? Why can't they be satisfied with being good at one thing? But you're comparing two different operating systems. Some brains are built for depth. Yours is built for breadth. Some people get dopamine from mastery and refinement. You get dopamine from discovery and acquisition. Neither is better. They're just different. But there's a cost to this wiring that people don't acknowledge. You're really good at a lot of things, but you're rarely the best at anything. Because being the best requires staying past the point where it's interesting, it requires grinding through the plateau, and your brain rebels against that. So, you end up with this collection of abandoned masteries, a resume that looks scattered, a skill set that's impressive but hard to categorize, and every time someone asks what you do, you struggle to answer. Because what you do is learn things, and once you've learned them, you move on. Here's something that'll mess with you. The people who stay, who master something and then keep going, they're not more disciplined than you. They're just wired differently. They get their dopamine from refinement, from perfecting, from the subtle increments that bore you to tears. Their brain rewards them for staying. Yours rewards you for leaving. And society has decided their wiring is virtuous and yours is flaky. But that's not neuroscience. That's just bias. And here's the part that stings. You've probably been told your whole life to just pick something and stick with it, to stop being a quitter, to commit. And you've tried. You forced yourself to stay with things past the point of interest, and it felt like dying, like being trapped. Like wasting time on something you've already figured out when there's so much else you haven't explored yet, but you kept doing it anyway because everyone said that's what you're supposed to do, until you couldn't anymore, until the boredom became unbearable and you left. Again, and the guilt came back. Again. So, let me tell you something your brain already knows, but society won't validate. You're not supposed to stay. Not if your brain is wired this way. Staying means forcing yourself into a pattern that fights your neurology. And you can do it. You can white-knuckle your way through a lifetime of mastery maintenance. But it will cost you. It'll cost you the joy of learning, the excitement of discovery, the aliveness you feel when you're in that sweet spot between incompetent and expert. And that cost might be too high. But here's what you need to understand about yourself. You're not avoiding mastery because you're scared of it. You're moving past mastery because you've extracted what you needed from it. You learned the thing. You proved to yourself you could. And now your brain is saying, okay, what's next? That's not failure. That's completion. You're just defining completion differently than people who are wired for depth. For them, completion is perfection. For you, completion is comprehension. And maybe the goal isn't to force yourself to stay. Maybe the goal is to build a life that accommodates your wiring. A career that values breadth over depth. Relationships that don't require you to be one fixed thing. An identity flexible enough to hold all your former masteries without demanding you become a master of one. Maybe the goal is to stop apologizing for moving on and start designing systems that let you move on guilt-free. Because here's the truth. The world needs both types. It needs people who go deep, who refine, who perfect, and it needs people who go wide, who connect, who synthesize. The surgeon who spends a lifetime perfecting one procedure saves lives. And the person who learned enough medicine, enough engineering, enough design to build the surgical robot saves lives too. Just differently. Your brain isn't wrong. It's just playing a different game. So if you're someone who gets bored after mastering something, who's left a trail of abandoned expertise behind you, who's really good at 12 things but not the best at any of them, listen. You're not broken. You're not uncommitted. You're not a quitter. Your brain is wired for acquisition, not maintenance. For becoming, not being. For breadth, not depth. And that's not a flaw. That's a feature. The guilt you feel is society's voice, not your brain's truth. Your brain is just trying to optimize for learning. And learning requires leaving what you already know. You don't have to force yourself to stay. You just have to stop feeling bad about leaving. Because the next thing is waiting. And your brain already knows that's where the dopamine is. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you mastered and then completely abandoned? And if you're tired of feeling guilty about moving on, hit subscribe. Next video breaks down why people who start 10 projects but finish none aren't failures. They're just wired differently. Click it. You'll finally understand why you operate this way.